Welcome to each of you this morning as we come back to Christ in Leviticus. If you remember, we've been doing the 5 offerings, all right? We started in lesson 3. There's 5 different kind of offerings, and there's 2 types or categories, which is the sweet savor. That means it's a sweet smell in the nostrils of God because it's showing Jesus and his perfections and what Christ meant to God, all right? The first 3 belong to this. Of them, 2 are blood sacrifices. And then there are 2 that are called non-savor. They're compulsory. They weren't voluntary. People had to because they represent sin, and it represented Christ bearing the demerits of the sinner, all right, and what Christ means to us in order that we should be forgiven. And if that's the 2, the sin offering and the trespass offering. These are what we've been working on this last week. We were on the sin offering. We didn't finish it. We will finish it today and go on into the trespass offering. So if you'll turn with me to lesson 7, all right, we're actually to start on page 3. Which says the classifications, and this is chapter 4 of Leviticus, all right? Page 3, but we're going to turn back to page 2, all right? It said the classification of the sin offerings. A, for the priest that is anointed, all right? And then go to page 3. We actually did that whole thing about the priest, but now we're going to start B, for the whole congregation. So it's showing us the different categories of people that need to offer a sacrifice for this sin offering, all right? And it's the second one is for the whole congregation. And it says it's actually the same as the one for the anointed priest, all right? Same in rites, same in the ceremonies, same in results, all right? But that's why I want us to go back to page 2, and we're just going to do a brief overview, all right? Because it says that for the congregation, it's exactly the same as the anointed priest. It's been a whole week. We probably have forgotten what that exactly the same. But before we do that, let's look at number 2. Why were they the same? Because whether it was the representative of the assembly that sinned, or whether the assembly itself sinned, God saw it as on an equal par. In other words, the one that represented the whole assembly, if they sinned, whatever happened, it happened to the whole assembly. If the whole assembly sinned, then the one that was representing them was included in that. And so there was only one difference, all right? And that is who identified with that sacrifice. So because of that, we're going to go back and very rapidly go through page 2, because the priest that is anointed is representing the full assembly to God. The priest is the go-between, bringing the needs of the people to God and bringing God's desires down to the people. He's the go-between, all right? And if he were the one that sinned, we learned last week that he had to offer a large offering, all right? The young bullock without blemish. That means it's a male, all right? It couldn't be a female. And the reason was that they're supposedly the ones that know best what God is wanting. And therefore, it's like a large apprehension of what Christ did, all right? It was the person themselves, that priest that was anointed. And you remember what I told you last week. You couldn't hide it in under your coat or like that, or pretend that you were praying for somebody else or you represented somebody else. No, they had to walk from where they stayed all the way to the tabernacle, leading this young bull, all right, which is a big animal. Everybody saw them when they were walking toward the tabernacle, which means you couldn't hide the fact you had committed sin and you were bringing a sin offering before the Lord, all right? Then they had to identify with that offering by putting their hands on it, all right? Now, over here in page 3, if it's a sin that the whole congregation committed, and I want us to remember what we learned last week, it had to be a sin of ignorance, all right? It couldn't be a willful purpose sin, but a sin of ignorance. In the Old Testament, there is no sacrifice, there is no picture or type for a willful sin to be forgiven, all right? God is a great God. He can do whatever he wants. But if he doesn't give us a picture and a type, it's rather scary, all right? And what he's saying is it needs to be one of ignorance. That means you weren't aware of it. Now, again, I want to say, because the very same thing goes for when the whole congregation does it, all right? You can know with your head what you did was wrong. But if you are ignorant spiritually what it is, for instance, like when serial killers kill one person after another, don't tell me they don't know what they're doing. Of course they know what they're doing. Armed robbery, it's well planned. They know what they're doing in the natural, but God is a spirit. And if they're not aware of what they're doing and how bad it is in the eyes of God, there is room for them to be forgiven. And we read it last week, so we're not going to go over the whole thing. For each thing that was done and offered to the Lord, and it said, it shall be forgiven them. And each section, it was if they commit a sin of ignorance. Then later in that portion, it will say, it shall be forgiven them. So God is a very gracious God, all right? But here with the priest that is anointed, he had to identify with it by putting his hands on that bull. In other words, my sin is going on this animal. This animal is going to bear my sin for me. But with this next group, which is for the whole congregation, all right, it would be that under 3b, the elders of the congregation, they represented the whole body of believers, and therefore the elders would place their hands on the victim, a symbol that their guilt and their sins would go there. I think, you know, if we remember, I don't know if you remember, but in the book of Daniel, when Daniel realized by numbers that the 70 years that they were banished and went into captivity into the land of Babylon, he figured it out. Wow, we're coming to the end of those 70 years. So he did a Daniel fast, which for 3 weeks, if you remember right. Now, when he prayed, Daniel was a very godly man, very godly man. But when he prayed as if he was one of those that he was praying for. He said, you know, forgive us our sins, forgive us our, I'm not quoting, I'm just relating, our idolatries and the things that we have done. He included as a representative of the whole group, even though he himself did not do it. That we need to understand, friends, that when we belong to the body of Christ, I'm now referring to New Testament times, and, you know, I'm not one of those, you know, why should I pray like that? I didn't do any of that. No, if you're part of the body, when one sins, all suffer. When one rejoices, all rejoice. And we need to understand that. And so the elders of the congregation, who were the representatives, put their hands on the victim, whereas with the priest, who was the representative of everybody, all right, in that first one, only he put his hands there because he was the one that did it. But when it was the whole congregation, then the elders of the congregation put their hands there. I'm going to ask Rita if you will read for us chapter 4, starting with verse 13, and we will look at this verse 15.
Leviticus 4:13. And if the whole congregation of Israel sin through ignorance, and the thing be hid from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which should not be done, and are guilty. 14. When the sin which they have sinned against it is known, then the congregation shall offer a young bullock for the sin and bring him before the tabernacle of the congregation. And the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands upon the head of the bullock before the Lord, and the bullock shall be killed before the Lord.
All right. And then it tells us just go ahead and read right through 21, will you?
Right. Okay. Verse 16. And the priest that is anointed shall bring of the bullock's blood to the tabernacle of the congregation. And the priest shall dip his finger in some of the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord and before the veil. And he shall put some of the blood upon the horns of the altar, which is before the Lord, that is in the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall pour out all the blood at the bottom of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And he shall take all his fat from him and burn it upon the altar. And he shall do with the bullock as he did with the bullock for a sin offering, so shall he do with this. And the priest shall make an atonement for them. It shall be forgiven them. And he shall carry forth the bullock without the camp and burn him as he burned the first bullock. It is a sin offering for the congregation.
Yeah. So we see there, all right, what they would do. They had to do just like that first, everything that was done there in the first. But now this one is different. It's for the whole congregation. And what happened is when they sprinkled that blood, because once, all right, let me put it like this. When they first went into Jericho, they were told they were not allowed to touch anything for themselves. Everything was set apart for God. And if you remember, one of the fellows took and hid it in his tent. Now, God's blessing, God's safety, God's protection was removed, even though the rest of the congregation didn't know what had happened. So you say, how can it be a sin of ignorance and they not know? Yes, somebody within their group did what God told them not to do. God saw it, God knew it, and immediately the whole congregation came under that curse, if you want to put it like that. The presence of God was cut off from before them. Whatever God's presence stood for, in this case, protection and blessing and fellowship, that was broken. All right. The whole congregation didn't understand it. In fact, Joshua didn't understand it. He got down and prayed, and he said, "Oh God, why have you let us be defeated before the enemy?" And the Lord said, "Because somebody has taken things. I said they shouldn't touch it, and they have taken it." And he didn't. Now, God could have told, but he didn't. And they went to seek by the way that they do, casting lots. And the lot came out exactly, tribe by tribe, and then family by family, and then person by person. And of course, I think it was Achan, if I'm not mistaken. He was taken and he admitted them. All right. So as soon as sin was taken care of, all right, and atoned for, then God's blessing once again came upon them. All right. So this is the way that they would have to bring a sin offering and present it. And then God would once again. So when they put the blood and sprinkled it before the veil, that was to once again where the high priest could go in and not be killed. All right. Now let's go to C. This is from 22 to 26. This is for the prince or the ruler. That means it could have been anybody. It could have been the king, if there was a king, but there wasn't at this time. Prince, ruler, somebody of authority and power. All right. It didn't, if they sinned, it did not hamper the whole body. All right. It was only a question of individual conscience. You say, how come in the story you just told? Because the whole congregation was told what they should not do when they entered into Jericho. Do not touch anything. Do not take anything for yourself. All of it is set apart to me. If it's good, it will be mine. If it's bad, it's to be destroyed. This was God told all of them. And therefore, when one of them sinned, it cut off for the whole group. All right. But this is just an individual sin of a prince or a ruler. It didn't break the fellowship for the entire group. All right. Let's read that 22 to 26.
Leviticus 4, verses 22 to 26. When a ruler had sinned and done somewhat through ignorance against any of the commandments of the Lord his God concerning things which should not be done, and is guilty. Or if his sin, wherein he had sinned, come to his knowledge, he shall bring his offering, a kid of the goats, a male without blemish, and he shall lay his hand upon the head of the goat, and kill it in the place where they killed the burnt offering before the Lord. It is a sin offering. 25. And the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it upon the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour out his blood at the bottom of the altar of burnt offering. And he shall burn all his fat upon the altar, as the fat of the sacrifice of peace offerings. And the priest shall make an atonement for him as concerning his sin, and it shall be forgiven him.
Yeah. Notice that in each of these cases, if it's a sin of ignorance, as soon as they're aware of it, it's brought to their attention. You know, I'm going to tell a story that this just happened this morning. It has to do with me. And I think it shows this sin of ignorance very well. All right. When we were young, all right, in our first term of service, you know, that we were going to take like a year off and go to the States. So we asked somebody, it was a relative, a family, to come, and we let them, the man took over the, you know, the running of the church and all that. And they made use of our house. They didn't have to have anything of their own except their clothes and things, because everything was there in the house. Now, it hadn't been that long since I got married. That this sounds strange, but I'm a person that I like to keep things. I don't like to, I'm not rough on things. I still have amongst some of my serving things, spoons and like that they were my wedding gifts. And I was married 68 years, and it's already been almost 2 or 3 since then. It's been a long time, but I still have them. I still use them. All right. It doesn't mean I've never gotten anything new. All right. But these certain things which had to do with serving spoons and like that, I took care of them well. Now, cutting the long story short, when this family took over after we came back, and then they left, and then we went ahead and, came back into our own home, I found one of these serving, it's a big, and it had, wood at the bottom, and then the spoon had holes, so you could, then water flows out. I found it out in the garden. All right. No wood on the handle. Don't know what happened to the handle, but just the metal part. And it was being used out in the garden to dig around plants and things. I rescued it. I washed it up. I'm still using it to this day. All right. To this day, I still use that. No wooden handle. But every time I would think of that spoon, and even now, every time, not every time, but a lot of the times, I'll remember it used to have a beautiful wooden handle on it. This morning, when I was praying and preparing to come for this class, and I was just crying out to the Lord. In fact, I was praying for Thursday for those people that are wanting to be filled with the Holy Spirit after the class, that God would help them and so forth and so on. And the picture of that spoon came to me again. And I went through the whole thing. you know, it used to have a beautiful wooden handle on it, but I'm still using it today. It's still a nice spoon. And what in the world did she do to get rid of that handle? I mean, all the other pieces still have their wooden handle, but that one piece doesn't have it. So did it catch fire? And suddenly I realized, why does this picture keep coming to me? Do you know how many years it's been? Well over 60 years. And today I said, Lord, I choose to forgive her for that. I've never felt animosity. I've never even told her about it. I've never, you know, I've had her in the home, they stay with us. I've never thought of that when she was here. But it just suddenly came. Maybe I've never forgiven from my heart. So I said, Lord, I choose to forgive from my heart whatever she did to that spoon. And I'm still using it, but you know, it's not a beautiful spoon anymore like some of the others are. And the moment I said from my heart, I choose to forgive, I broke into laughter. I was laughing in the spirit. I was caught away in the spirit. I broke into the most wonderful worship. And then I realized all these years I've had that in my heart. I didn't recognize it was unforgiveness. Just I'd get a mental picture, but I didn't realize I had never forgiven. But I don't think it's going to be there anymore now. So this is what I'm telling you. It is possible to sin a sin of ignorance. You're not aware that in the realm of the spirit, you have sinned. All right. But when God brings it to your knowledge, and then you can either forgive or confess or make it right, whenever it is. All right. So don't feel like this has nothing to do with me. And I think God let this happen today, knowing I had to teach this and I could use it as an illustration of how you can sin a sin of ignorance. All right. But for the prince or the ruler, they didn't have to bring that big bull. All right. They could bring it from the a kid of the goats. Notice that under number 2. All right. The only thing done with the blood was that altar of burnt offering. They put the blood on the 2 horns. This is where everybody came to offer their individual sin offering. And when it was put on the horns, then they were accepted of the Lord. It had to do with their individual conscience. Though they are more than the common person, they're higher up, they should understand more about the Lord, yet they're not put in the category of the priest or the whole congregation. So they did not have to offer a bull, but rather a kid of the goats. All right. So a male, it had to be a male without blemish, not a female. All right. Because the ruler exerted a wider influence than the ordinary person, because they had people under them. They reached their influence was a wider range. So therefore, they needed a more powerful application of the value of the blood. I am not here to say men are, when I say the male is more, it's just in that day and age, a male brought in more money when they had to pay for it. It was considered a stronger thing than a female. All right. And so we're doing it spiritually. They had to have a better understanding of the blood of Jesus and the value of the blood. Now, D is, we're not going to read that whole thing for the common person, all right? But notice in each of these cases, if it's a sin of ignorance, it shall be forgiven them. The end of the portion will say, it shall be forgiven them or him, all right? With this 27th, all right, we're going to start and read a bit of it. Verse 27,
Leviticus 4,
28,
yes.
and 29.
Yes. Leviticus 4, 27 to 29. And if any one of the common people sin through ignorance, while he doth somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which ought not to be done, and be guilty, or if his sin which he hath sinned come to his knowledge, then he shall bring his offering, a kid of the goats, a female without blemish, for his sin which he had sinned. And he shall lay his hand upon the head of the sin offering, and slay the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering.
Yeah, so you'll notice here that they had to identify with it. It's my sin, and then they had to do the killing of it, which shows that it's because of me Jesus had to die. I'm applying it spiritually here, all right? Notice for the common person, it was not a male without blemish, it was a female. It was a lesser, all right, the common person didn't have such a wide extent of influence, and therefore they could have a weaker concept. A female was accepted, but all of it had to be without blemish because it represented Jesus. Every one of these represent Jesus, but it's as people's, how they see it, as how with the knowledge that they have, how do they, their concept of it, all right? So now let's go to number 3, the law of the sin offering, all right? Chapter 6, 24 to 30.
Leviticus 6, verses 24 to 30. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and to his sons, saying, This is the law of the sin offering. In the place where the burnt offering is killed, shall the sin offering be killed before the Lord. It is most holy. The priest that offereth it for sin shall eat it. In the holy place shall it be eaten, in the court of the tabernacle of the congregation. Whatsoever shall touch the flesh thereof shall be holy. And when there is sprinkled of the blood thereof upon any garment, thou shalt wash that whereon it was sprinkled in the holy place. But the earthen vessel wherein it is soldered shall be broken. And if it shall be soldered in a brazen pot, it shall be both scoured and
scoured. That means really scrubbed hard, all right?
And rinsed in water. All the males among the priests shall eat thereof. It is most holy. And no sin offering whereof any of the blood is brought into the tabernacle of the congregation to reconcile withal in the holy place shall be eaten. It shall be burnt in the fire.
Yeah, so let's see what this is talking about. The location where the sin offering was killed, same place as the burnt offering. The burnt offering was a sweet smell to the Lord. All right, this is a sin offering, but what it's showing under number 2, A2, inseparable connection. All right, the sin offering is showing Jesus as our substitute. That's my words for substitutionary atonement. Seeing Jesus as our substitute. And our substitute, All right, though he takes our sin upon him, he himself in the eyes of God has no sin. So the sinless perfection of the substitute, both are Jesus, whether the burnt offering where he offers himself totally to God, or whether he is taking our place, he himself had no sin. Therefore, they were killed in the very same place. The sin offering was called most holy. All right. Now, don't get mixed up here. It's not saying sin is more. It's still talking about Jesus, who was our substitute, most holy. All right. Read for us 2 Corinthians 5:21. We've read it last week, but we're going to read it again.
2 Corinthians 5:21. For he hath made him to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him.
Yeah. He was made sin, but he himself knew no sin. He had never committed sin of his own. That's why he could be our substitute. Had he had his own sin, like me, I can't offer myself for you all. I have my own sin to take care of. Jesus, if he had sin, could not have been the representative, could not have been the substitute. It took somebody without any sin coming and being willing to take that punishment. Amen. So he himself was sinless. Now, the priestly portion, it says the priest who offered it, the one that whoever brings this, all right, and it's talking about the prince or the ruler or the common person, because it says if any of the blood was brought and had to be sprinkled, that means the priest that was anointed or the whole congregation. Nobody was allowed to eat that. Nobody could enjoy that at all. It had to be totally burnt up and gotten rid of. But if it's the prince or the ruler, when it's an individual conscience, all right, or the common person who is offering this, whichever priest that was anointed and took that and did all of the work around the altars, that belonged to them, and they were able to eat it. And any one of the males of the priests had a right to eat, all right, as long as number 4, you put something there to let you know how important that is. Offering whose blood was not brought into the holy place where they sprinkled it, all right. That kind of an offering could not be enjoyed. Like the priest that brought that big bull, they couldn't afterwards enjoy. No, that was for his individual sin, and therefore nobody was allowed to enjoy it. But you say, then how come with the other two? Because as a priest, all right, if I'm just going to use myself as an example. If I talk to you, witness to you, teach you, and you follow what I tell you, and therefore you get right with God, I get to enjoy it. I get to praise God. Oh, that's wonderful. So that's the same as partaking of it. All right. But when the priest himself had sinned, no one was allowed to do any kind of enjoyment. It was a terrible thing that had happened. It had cut off all relationship with God. All right. I hope that you understand this. Now, I think this is the best, even though it's only 42. Let's take our 10 minutes off, and because we're going to start the trespass offering. There's only 2 pages, but there is a lot to talk about, and I have a couple of illustrations. So I think it will take the full time. let's take it's been 42 quite a while. Let's say 53, come back at 53. All right, 9:53, and then we will start on our second lesson, which is the trespass or guilt offering. Okay, shall we come back now? We're going to start on lesson 8, number 1, the trespass or guilt offering. I'm going to be very truthful with you. All right. I've between the sin offering and this trespass offering, I've been teaching it for years, but very confused in my own head. And of course, I never admitted that before that I know of. But I think the Lord is, he's done some work within me, because I finally see it. Somewhere I got the idea that the sin offering represented the sin nature in us, and the trespass offering was the individual sin. And I don't know where I didn't read properly. I didn't understand properly. And because this time round, as I was studying it again, the sin offering, yes, it does talk about our sin nature. It does represent our nature. And I believe last week I talked about the fact that, I am not a sinner because I sin. I sin because I'm a sinner. All right. There's a sin nature in me. It causes me to sin. It causes me to gravitate toward things that I shouldn't do rather than what I should do. That's because of the sin nature. But the sin offering was for any sin. It was for any sin except the certain sins. You had to do the trespass, because you'll notice it's quite different in what's being offered. For the trespass or the guilt offering, there was no different degrees, like you have a better comprehension, apprehension. So one gives a large one, one gives a smaller one gives a bull, one gives a lamb. No, there is not that. With the trespass offering, there is only one animal that's allowed to be offered, and it's always the same, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you have the money or whether you don't have the money, a ram. So it cannot be that this trespass offering is just for any old sin. No, I realized this time round, the trespass offering is for a certain classification of sin. All trespasses are sins, but not all sin is a trespass sin. All right. It doesn't need to have the trespass offering. So listen carefully, will you? Before we start on this one, I'm going to ask Sister Rita to read again 2 Corinthians 5:21. We read it just now, but I want it read one more time. All right.
2 Corinthians 5:21. For he hath made him to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him.
Yeah. He made Jesus to be sin. And that word in the original, all right, from the text that it was copied from, is made a sin offering for us. He was made a sin offering for us. He himself knew no sin. Why? That you and I might be made the righteousness of God. That means God's righteousness, the righteousness of Jesus Christ was bestowed upon us. God now sees us with a new spiritual bank account. All right. We are now under the righteousness of God. We are on an equal par with him. So remember, all sin comes under the sin offering, but the trespass offering, it is a sin, but it is a special category of sin. And if we look into this, then you cannot just offer the sin offering. You must offer the trespass or guilt offering. So let's start here. The trespass or guilt offering is Christ as expiator, all right? Meaning he paid for the penalty. He paid for the wrongdoing, all right? That he made amends for something that had been done wrong. Introduction. The significance or description symbolizes satisfaction or restitution. So I want you to realize that this is the main truth I want us to understand. Well, there's many, but this is a definite truth that we need to understand, and that is restitution. The trespass or guilt offering teaches us about restitution. It's an offering for a particular kind of sin, invading or disregarding the property rights of another person. There, I've got it written, all right? Every trespass is a sin, but not every sin was a trespass. So it's written right there for you. You can put a bracket around 3 and 4, they go together. Now, have you ever seen a sign on property and it says no trespassing? In other words, we don't want people coming and walking here. We don't want them coming on this. This is our property. You just stay off of it. And if the government puts it there, no trespassing, you better be careful if you trespass, because you're going to get in trouble with them. All right. No trespassing means you don't have a right to come onto that property or whatever it might be. So we'll just carry on as we go, and then I will just talk as we go. B, the distinguishing features. The trespass offering was always a ram. That's a male. And that is, of course, it's not of the cows, the herd, it's from the flock. All right, a ram. If it's female, it's called a ewe. But here it's a ram, and it's not a baby. It's considered an adult male sheep or male goat. All right. In every case, for all people, didn't matter who it was a ram. They couldn't say, but I can't afford it. Well, then you shouldn't have done what you did. All right. That there's no way that this can be a type of ignorance, a sin of ignorance. And it doesn't even mention a sin of ignorance per se that I know of. All right. I can be wrong. I better not be so quick to say that. C, it differed from the ritual of the sin offering, where under the sin offering, you had this graduation of sacrifices according to the degree of guilt and responsibility, or according to the wealth or the poverty of the offender. If they didn't have the money, they could give a lesser, which that would show in the realm of the spirit, they didn't have the understanding, all right? So you could give a bigger offering or you could give a lesser, depending upon what position you held or your wealth, all right? But this one, all right, number 2, required payment of full reparation, all right? And reparation means completely satisfying and repairing and paying back, complete paying back for the trespass, plus an additional 20% fine on the whole amount that was involved, all right? This is an equivalent to a double tithe. Now let's do a little arithmetic here. For $100, what is 10%? $10. So for 20% would be $20, all right? I think we need to learn this truth about restitution, because too many times we just take things lightly. There are some people, they love to borrow other people's things, all right? Of course, you'd like to borrow so-and-so's BMW when you only drive an old ramshackle of a thing. This is a special occasion. May I borrow your BMW? If something happens, do you have the money to buy another one? Do you have the wherewithal to pay it back? Other people like to borrow your clothes. They like to borrow this. They like to borrow that. And while it's under their care, something happens to it. It's spoiled. It's ruined. It can't be used. Sorry, sorry, no cure. Yeah, you should have thought of that before you borrowed it. I don't like to borrow people's things because I know this truth too well. I've learned it. You're responsible for it when you borrow it. You cannot just, I don't know. I just don't know what happened. And then suddenly hear, I'm so sorry. Hope you can forgive me. No. In this case, under the Old Testament, they had to bring a ram. And it was costly, whether you had it or whether you didn't have it. And then you had to pay 20% besides, all right? So let's look under number 2. There are 2 kinds of trespass offering. The first one we're going to deal with is when it's trespassing against God. That means we've overridden, we've taken something that belongs to God and used it for the wrong means or done something with it, all right? So it's, well, there it says sin through, okay, number 1, sin through ignorance cannot be passed over, all right? God cannot sanction iniquity, but God can blot it out, all right? I want a sister to read for us. This is chapter 5. We're going to start with 15 through 19.
Leviticus 5:15 to 19. If a soul commit a trespass and sin through ignorance in the holy things of the Lord, then he shall bring for his trespass unto the Lord a ram without blemish out of the flocks, with thy estimation by shekels of silver, after the shekel of the sanctuary, for a trespass offering.
All right, stop now. One thing I want you to realize here, all right, they weren't allowed to decide, is this ram proper or not? All right. No, listen to what it says again. A ram without blemish, with your estimation, if you're not going to bring the, if you're going to bring the shekels, all right, of silver, it had to be the shekel of the sanctuary, the money, because you had to pay 20% extra, and you couldn't decide because they had different shekels, but this had to be the one that was used in the temple, and it was the priest who decided how much a shekel was. You couldn't decide a shekel is this so much. No, it's like today when you have your different monies and the different, okay, one Singapore dollar is equivalent to this, one this is equivalent to that. Everybody has a different idea about it, but this had to be according to the sanctuary, according to what they used in the temple and by the priest. All right, continue.
Yes, verse 16. And he shall make amends for the harm that he had done in the holy thing, and shall add the fifth part thereto, and give it unto the priest. And the priest shall make an atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering, and it shall be forgiven him.
Notice there, it shall be forgiven. All right, continue.
17. And if a soul sin and commit any of these things which are forbidden to be done by the commandments of the Lord, though he wist it not, yet is he guilty, and shall bear his iniquity. And he shall bring a ram without blemish out of the flock, with thy estimation, for a trespass offering unto the priest. And the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning his ignorance, wherein he erred and wist it not. It shall be forgiven him. It is a trespass offering. He hath certainly trespassed against the Lord.
Yeah. So this is showing, all right, sin through ignorance cannot be passed over, all right, because God is a holy God. And when it has anything to do with him, all right, he cannot, when it says sanction, that means he cannot say, oh, it's okay. Oh, I understand. No, if it's sin, it's sin. All right, but he can blot it out. All right, his grace is perfect. Therefore, he can forgive any and all. I didn't put any there, but he can forgive all. His holiness is perfect. Therefore, he cannot pass over anything. I want you to write there, Exodus 34, 5-7.
Exodus 34, 5-7. And the Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of the Lord. And the Lord passed by before him and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children, unto the third and to the fourth generation.
Okay, so it shows very clearly there. Yes, he's merciful. Yes, he's gracious. Yes, he's long-suffering. Yes, he is a good God. Yes, he is a truthful God. Yes, he has mercy for thousands. All right, and he's a forgiving God. But if you're guilty and you don't want to admit it, or you want to just, no, no, he will not clear the guilty. You are guilty till you get it taken care of. You admit it, you ask for forgiveness, you ask for God to get you off through applying the blood of Jesus. All right. So you can put a bracket around the B and the C. His grace is perfect, therefore he can forgive all. But his holiness is perfect, therefore he cannot pass over anything. All right. So number 2, in the holy things of the Lord, which were the tithes and offering. I mean, there were other things too, but we're dealing with this. Malachi 3, 8 and 9.
Malachi 3 verses 8 and 9. Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation.
Okay, so God himself asks this question: will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. And they say, all right, where have we robbed you? How have we robbed you, God? And God tells it in tithes and offerings. Now, tithes is a must. Some people are not taught. I have read, especially in the New Testament church, no, that's only for the Old Testament. No, Jesus sanctioned it when he said, you tithe this, and you should do that. He sanctioned tithing. All right. I am here to tell you, when people say, we give more than a tithe, I don't believe a word of it. I don't believe a word of it. All right. When you learn to tithe, then you learn to give above and beyond. But people who do not tithe, their giving is always a lesser giving, because 10% is a lot. All right. But here, God not only said in tithes, but he said in offerings. You say, I thought offerings is like free will. If tithes is a must. Yeah, because he expects us to give him offerings. He gave everything. All that you and I have is from him. So he has stated it very clearly. It is not just under the law. Please, tithing comes before the law. It started in the Garden of Eden, and it is in picture and type all the way through Scripture. All right, that God has set apart the first portion for himself. All right, that's one of the first things my father taught us as kids. I'm telling you, there were 3 of us. Others had died and gone on, but 3 of us that grew up together. And people would give my father $10 and say, this is for your 3 children. How do you divide $10 amongst 3 children? You figure it out. You can never, as always, dots. And so the Lord, my father would come and tell us, kids, somebody gave you $10. And of course we would all cheer, yay, yay. And then he would say, how much do we tithe on this $10? And we would all say $1. So he'd take the $1 out and put it aside. He's okay, you have 3, you have 3, you have 3, and you've all paid your tithe in that dollar. And it always worked out nicely. I learned that from young. All right. And I'm grateful to my parents for teaching All right. But you know what? I don't think I have time. No, I don't. So we're just going to go on because I have two other stories to tell you. So let's go on. In tithes and in offerings. Don't say I gave my tithes, so I don't need to give any more. No, we need to give offerings. That's depending on how much you want to give God. All right. And the more you walk with him and the more he walks with you, you start getting more and more generous when you give him his offerings. All right. So, so in the holy things of the Lord, which is tithes, offerings, B, property given in vows. All right. All that's forbidden by the commandments of the Lord, anything that God has said, this is mine, this is for me, and we are to obey that. Otherwise, we have trespassed the Lord. All right. Approach to God, how to approach holy God. All right. First, presented his offering to the Lord, and then paid the full amount plus a double tithe. That's how, when it was a sin against God. All right. Then the second kind of trespass is against man. This is chapter 6, verses 1 to 7. All right.
Leviticus 6, verses 1 to 7. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, if a soul sin and commit a trespass against the Lord, and lie unto his neighbor in that which was delivered him to keep, or in fellowship, or in a thing taken away by violence, or hath deceived his neighbor, or hath found that which was lost, and lieth concerning it, and sweareth falsely, in any of these things that a man doth, sinning therein. Verse 4, then it shall be, because he hath sinned and is guilty, that he shall restore that which he took violently away, or the thing which he had deceitfully gotten, or that which was delivered him to keep, or the lost thing which he found, or all that about which he had sworn falsely. He shall even restore it in the principal, and shall add the fifth part more thereto, and give it unto him to whom it appertaineth in the day of his trespass offering. And he shall bring his trespass offering unto the Lord, a ram without blemish out of the flock, with thy estimation for a trespass offering unto the priest. And the priest shall make an atonement for him before the Lord, and it shall be forgiven him for anything of all that he hath done in trespassing therein.
Right. Now notice, whether it's against the Lord or against man, all had to, offering had to be given unto the Lord, a trespass offering. All right. Because all sin is against God. Even though it's against people, it is really against God. All right. As a child of God, as somebody that he has made. So we're going to look here. I've listed it down. Trespass against man. All right. In number 1, in a matter of deposit that entrusted to another for safekeeping, but they lost it carelessly, or they disposed of it dishonestly. For instance, if they say, you know, may I bring my big bull over and leave it with your, and you don't pay attention, and somehow that bull runs away and gets lost, you're responsible. You can't just say, who told you? Well, why did you agree to let it come? But since you agreed to let it come, you know, and through your carelessness, it was lost, you got to pay it back. But it's a sin against God as well as man. But these under B are all the trespass against man, a bargain. When one takes advantage of another's ignorance or need, and they secure property unfairly or for less than its value, all right? Somebody is in need of money and you know it, and they're desperate, and then you they need to sell their land, and you make them sell it way under the value because they're in such a God does not like that. We might go away, well, I got a good deal, you know. No, you got to be careful about these good deals, that you haven't offended God by taking advantage of people in their situation. Robbery, all right, not only deeds of violence, but taking anything that doesn't belong to us, it belongs to somebody else, all right. Unfairly securing possession of the property of his neighbor, all right. Oppression, grinding the faces of the poor. In other words, giving for one's labor less than justice demands. You know, and there's some people like that. They have plenty of money themselves, but they want to give least and way below the going price that even sinners are paying. I don't know why some of God's children are like that. God is not pleased at all. That's called oppression, where you just make it difficult and hard. God would rather have us liberal and have us generous than to have us on somebody in order to better ourselves. It's called oppression. Finding lost possessions and then lying about it. You know, you find a billfold, you find a purse, and it has a lot of money in it. And then later, you know, you're asked and you lie and you say, no, I didn't find that. No, because you want what was inside of it. All right. Common ways the rights of others are being invaded. So the trespass is a sin where you cross over somebody else. Okay, the story I told in the first session about that handle being gone, and I felt the Lord showed me all these years I haven't really forgiven from my heart. I didn't have to write her a letter. It was my things. It wasn't hers. I never did anything to her things. So I just needed to deal with it with God. But if it's something against somebody else, I'm just going to tell you this short story that, you know, there was a lady, and when she discovered that she had cancer, she didn't do it in a Sunday morning service where other people might be there, but she did it in a prayer meeting service where those that were really zealous for the Lord, all right, so that it was quite a well-attended service. And she got up and openly confessed to the pastor that she had talked about him. And the reason she didn't just go to the pastor straight, because some of those in the meeting were those that she had backbite about the pastor. All right. So she made open confession. And only after that, taking care of that, it was like doing a trespass offering. And then she went to be prayed for, and God healed her of the cancer. Yeah. So I'm here to tell you, friends, when we do trespass against a person, it's different than when you just sin in your heart, or it's something to do with you. Anger, you can be angry and not show it to anybody. That's just between you and God. But if you get angry and then you shame somebody by exploding at them, downing them, scolding them in front of other people, you can't just, well, that's My problem, not theirs. Yes, it's theirs. You've trespassed. All right. So I'm just trying to get us to understand what trespass is. All right. All right. God's way learned through the trespass offering. It's not enough to feel repentant and ask God for forgiveness. The person offended must be approached first. Confess to the person we have offended, ask for pardon, then make full and complete reparation for the injury that has been done. All right. The third thing is Matthew 5:23 and 24.
Matthew 5, verses 23 and 24. Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift.
Yeah. So in other words, if you remember your brother has aught against you, that means you have done something wrong. And you realize that. Don't just keep worshiping the Lord and praising the Lord. Leave your offering, go get things rectified between you. You have committed a trespass, all right, in that they are very offended by whatever you have done. And then only after you make things right with them. All right. One thing about this trespass offering was they had to admit it with their mouth. They couldn't say, well, this, well, that. All right. They had to admit it. Now, I'm going to stop before I go to number 3 about the law of the trespass offering. Some of you, and while I was praying, I felt the Lord show me both of these stories. The one that I'm going to tell first, I know that story for myself, all right? But the other was a story that I've used in my younger days, but I've lost the book. It was a story that we used to use for children's church, and how God helped me to find it online, I have no idea. I just thank him, and I knew that God wanted me to share this, all right? But the first one is about restitution, all right? Restitution. And we're talking about this trespass offering where you take something or you do something to the property of another person. All right, that's you're trespassing against their rights. This is the story about our Chinese pastor. Of course, that was years ago. I was a little girl, and he's long since gone to heaven. But when this story happened, he was not yet the pastor. He was just, he was in the Chinese army. He was a soldier in the army, and he used to come to church with his army gear on, you know. And my father was more or less pastoring the church. He had started it. He had built the church. That's all a story of its own, and how God supplied the money through a stranger that just walked up to him. He doesn't know who the person is, gave enough money to finish building the church. Anyways, my father was teaching them and taught them about being filled with the Holy Spirit. So this, before he became a pastor, I just remember him as Pastor Young, Y-A-N-G. So his last name had to be Young. He wanted to be filled with the Holy Spirit. So he began to pray and ask God to fill him with the Holy Spirit. One day he came to my father and he said, Pastor Hansen, of course, all this is in Mandarin because he was in Peking, China. He said, Pastor Hansen, what has a white rooster got to do with being baptized in the Holy Spirit? And my father looked at him and said, I have no idea. Do you have a white rooster in your past? That's what he asked him. In your past, is there something about a white rooster? And the man looked at him and he got a shock and he said, yes. Now that you mention it, he said, my soldier comrade and myself, we were very hungry one day. And so we stole my neighbor's big white rooster and we cooked it and ate it. And my father said, well, what do you think you should do? And he, went out. He found out how much a white rooster costs. And then he wrote a letter to the man that had been his neighbor previously. He wrote a letter and he included the money in there, told how he got saved, told about this and how God is showing him this white rooster. And he said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know God at that time, but I'm wanting to know him more. And he's showing me this white rooster. So this is the money. Go buy yourself another big white rooster. And, after he mailed that letter off, he was filled mightily. Now you say, how come God doesn't do that with others? I have no idea, but maybe God, knowing that he was going to be a pastor, he was requiring things from him because it was something he did before he knew God, before he was born again, but God was requiring it. And the reason I felt led to tell this story, number one, it was definitely a trespass, taking somebody else's rooster that didn't belong to you, killing it, cooking it, eating it. That is under the category. It's a sin. Remember, I said all trespasses are sins, but not all sins are trespasses. But stealing is definitely a trespass. Robbing is a trespass. All right. All of these are trespasses. And so, why I'm telling this is those that have signed up to be baptized in the Holy Spirit. Yesterday, Sharon came over and she asked me to dictate it to her, and she wrote it out, sent it to me. We went over the list, and she didn't send it to everybody, all right? But those that are wanting to be baptized in the Spirit, it's because the verse says, repent and be baptized, every one of you, for the remission of sin, and you shall be filled with the Holy Spirit. And so we have listed there either 5 or 6 different things. And if you think of more, you can do more. But just like this morning, when God let that picture of that spoon come to me again, I'm praying when it came. I'm not even looking at it. And that's when I suddenly realized that I had unforgiveness in my heart. For over 60 years, I've been carrying this unforgiveness. But because I didn't feel bad, mean, hateful, I didn't recognize it, but God let me see it. And so that's why we're having you all, giving you these several days to go over these different areas and get rid of all the things that would hinder you from being baptized in the Holy Spirit. All right. Now, I'm going to tell you this other story before we go into the law of the trespass. All right. The name of this story is Big Jim. I'm sure if any of you have been in my classes, I haven't told it for a long time, but I used to use it just as much as the one on the little red hen. That also was what, because my husband and I used to do children's meetings when we were young. We pastored the children and, you know, had all kind of stories. And these were some of the stories that we used. This story of Big Jim was a place in America. It's a true story, all right? And it was up in the hills. I don't remember where, whether it was Kentucky. It was up in the mountainous area. And it was a very difficult area. They had just one schoolhouse for all the different grades. And then they would have a teacher that would come. But the older boys, they were very belligerent, disobedient, rebellious, and they prided themselves because pretty much they had chased every teacher away that had ever come to teach them. And the community was looking for another teacher. So this man offered his services. He said, I'll give it a try if you're willing to let me have a try at it. So when he came into the schoolhouse that morning, they all, you know, of course, had to welcome him. But when he started out, he said, you know what? I'm going to need your help, he said, because we need to have some rules in this class. And I don't really know what rules to have. So I need your help. Help me. And they started, you know, if somebody steals, yeah. So after about 6, 7, 8, they got all these different things written down. Then he said, it's no use having rules if we don't have punishment in case somebody breaks the rule. You all have made the rules. So you all decide what punishment it's going to be. And somebody said, you know, for stealing, oh, let it be 10 beatings on the bare back with like a stick or a rod. He said, wow, that sounds a little bit harsh. And no, they all yelled, no, 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 you know. And anyways, they gave their rules. So the rules, and then they said what punishment should be done, and they put it there, wrote it down. Anyways, by then he starts to teach. In 2 or 3 days, this boy, who is called Big Jim, he was usually one of those ringleaders that helped to chase the teachers away. And he came into the teacher and he said, somebody stole my lunch. I went to have my lunch and my lunch bag has been stolen and there's nothing in there. So the teacher called all the students together and said, we're going to have to find out who is the one that did this. And you remember what the rule was? It's 10 stripes on the back with a stick or a rod. You all made the rule, you all made the punishment to go with the rule. But as soon as we find out who did it, then we will see that justice is met. Well, in a day or two, the teacher said, we know now who did this. And it was another boy, but he was a tiny little fellow, frail, all right? He was only about 10 years old. His name was Jim as well. The other one, they differentiated by calling one Big Jim, and the other one was Little Jim. And Little Jim came that day that it was exposed that it was him. The teacher says, Little Jim, it has come to our knowledge that you are the one that took that lunch. So come up here. He had a big, thick coat around him. And he said, oh, teacher, he said, okay, but don't make me take my coat off. No, he said, the rule is it's on the bare back. And when the teacher said, you have to take this coat off, when he took it off, there was nothing there but his little bare body and just the bones, the ribs showing through. And to hold his pants up, there were like two suspenders over his bare body. And he said, why are you like this? And he said, because my father died a few months ago, and my mother is very poor. I only have one shirt, and today she's washing my shirt. So I took my brother's big coat to help keep me warm, and also so I wouldn't come without a coat, without a shirt. And he said, yes, I'm the one that did it. But he said, I hadn't eaten for a day or two, and I was so hungry that when I saw that bag and I was tempted and I opened the bag and I saw the food in there, I couldn't resist. And he said, I just ate it. He made confession of his sin. And the teacher said, I am so sorry, but this is the rule. I can't break the rule. I can't make an exception for the rule. But he looked at that little frail body and he thought, how in the world am I going to take a rod or a stick? But he kept his composure and he said, I'm sorry, little Jim, you come up here. And they took the coat off. People started to cry. Even some of the students started to cry in the class. And suddenly from the back of the room, Big Jim jumped up and he said, stop, because the teacher already had that cane up high it was going to come down on this little guy's back. He said, I'll take his place. I'll take his place. And the teacher stopped. He said, well, there's no law saying that somebody can't take his place. Are you sure, Big Jim, you're willing to take his place? Yes. He said, I will take his place. And he took his shirt off, and the teacher came down, after he'd done like 5 times on his back, the cane broke all over. People were crying because little Jim was there hanging on to Big Jim. He was crying, saying, I'm so sorry, Big Jim, but I love you. I love you, and I'll love you till the day I die, because you took my place. You took my punishment for the sin that I committed, the wrong that I committed. And friend, I want you to know that's exactly what Christ did as expiator, all right? He not only did the sin offering where he became sin or bore our sin for us, but he paid the full price, all right? He literally became, all right, like the trespass offering. He took all of our sins upon him and literally became that. And I just wept and cried as I was reading that story again. And I said, Lord, you didn't just take a beating and that's it. You gave your life. Your face was marred. Your appearance was marred more than anybody has ever been marred. And you literally went to hell. You became sin that we might become your righteousness. Do we really love you? Do we hug you and hang on to you and say, I'll love you till the day I die because you took it for us? Because sometimes we're not aware in the realm of the spirit what Jesus actually went through for us. Oh, that, it says, I think that let's go now to this law, all right, of the trespass offering, which is Leviticus 7, 1-7.
Leviticus 7, verses 1-7. Likewise, this is the law of the trespass offering. It is most holy. In the place where they kill the burnt offering, shall they kill the trespass offering, and the blood thereof shall he sprinkle round about upon the altar. And he shall offer of it all the fat thereof, the rump, and the fat that covereth the inwards.
All right, stop there for a moment. When it's, let's just go bit by bit. A is the first verse, second verse that she read. All right, the same place as the burnt offering. It's most holy, just like the sin offering, because it represents Jesus. All right, Jesus, who had no sin at all of his own, offers himself to take your place and to take my place. All right, so it was killed in the same place as the burnt offering. What was God's portion? All right, all the fat. We already know that. All right, the fat is not allowed to, and this means the excess fat. It's not the fat that is mixed up with the meat, where you have to cut. No. It's talking about the layers around it, all the fat. And the rump, I just wondered about that, and I've never looked it up, but today I looked it up, and I found out it's because I think of the rump as the two back sides. No, it was the fat tail. The fat tail, all right. And some of the renderings use that instead of rump, but the King James just uses rump, but actually it kind of lends a wrong picture. The rump has meat part to it. This is the tail, the fat tail, quite a solid thing that came down. Remember, this is the ram. It's not an ox, it is the ram. All right. And then the two kidneys, which we learned before, is spiritual judgment. All this belongs to God. They weren't allowed to eat it. They burnt it with fire because only God has a right to say, and judge spiritually if he sees sin, what is wrong. This only God has a right to do. We have no right unless it's something we see openly. In fact, I'm going to tell you this little story. I don't know why it's coming to me. One of my daughters, I have 3, so I'm not telling you which one, but one of my daughters was walking on a road and she passed by this place that wasn't a good place, but the road was a road to take her where she was going. It wasn't that she could have gone a different route, but somebody saw her just as she passed by that door. She didn't stop. She didn't look in there. When they saw her, she had just passed the door. And they spread stories that she had been in this place and come out of that place. It was a wrong place. And she never stopped. She didn't even look. She just walked by. Yet people made a snap judgment because she was in that vicinity. They said she had been there. This is what I'm talking about. Spiritual judgment belongs to God. Unless they're caught in the very act of it, don't be the one to say they did this, they did that. Yeah, in the past, this, that. No. Spiritual judgment, which is the 2 kidneys. And we learn the 2 kidneys need a lot of water to keep them purified so that the residue doesn't drop on the grate, all right, and the poisons back up into your system. So on our part is to the water of the word, to take plenty of the water of the word so that our bloodstream between us and God, everything is right. But the actual spiritual judgment, that is for the Lord. The call, of course, was spiritual digestion, if you remember. All right, it was above the kidneys, and I can't remember. I'm not good on my anatomy. You just have to forgive me. But spiritual digestion is not just eating, but where that food literally becomes part of your body. Only God spiritually can cause you, as you partake of the word of God, he knows whether by faith you're taking it or whether you're reading it out of formality or what. And if you're reading it by faith, then he has that ability to cause you to digest it, where spiritually that word about Jesus or God becomes part of your lifestyle. Only God can do that, all right? So now let's go to C. Okay. Did we read verse 5 yet?
No, we stopped. We finished 3.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Just read 4, then I've already talked about it, but that's all right.
All right. Leviticus 7.
Read right to 7.
Yes, 4 to 7. And the 2 kidneys and the fat that is on them, which is by the flanks, and the caul that is above the liver with the kidneys, it shall he take away. And the priest shall burn them upon the altar for an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a trespass offering. Every meal among the priests shall eat thereof. It shall be eaten in the holy place. It is most holy. As the sin offering is, so is the trespass offering. There is one law for them. The priest that maketh atonement therewith shall have it.
Yes. So if and everything to do with it. And of course, we already learned, all right, it's those two categories. All right, it cannot be the category where a priest who is anointed does it, or if it's the congregation itself. So it would have to be the individual trespass offering, whether of the ruler or whether of the, but it's all the same. It's the trespass is the ram, all right? So the priest that makes the atonement, that offers it up to God, it's his. If they're a male among the priests, they have a right to eat it, and they can eat it right there in the holy place, all right? Expressive of full identification to make another sin one's own, all right, demanded a higher degree of priestly energy. To be able to rejoice when somebody has committed a trespass, and to see them come back to God. I will tell you, I'm sorry to say it, but in the church, I'm not talking about any one church, I'm just talking about the church at large. Too often, there are people that have committed wrong, like trespass. They've taken the offerings. They've done wrong, and or they've committed moral sin, and committed sexual sin. Later, when they come back to repent, there are some that they never let you forget it. But you know what they did? You have to be really a priest in order to partake of it, eat it, rejoice, and say, God, you're wonderful. Though they did this, they've gotten it all right, doing it your way and not man's way. No more pointing the finger, no more, accusing, no more spreading bad tales. All right. If they're not a priest, they have no right to eat. A priest can understand and make another sin their own, all right, by rejoicing, eating thereof, and thanking God for it. Christ was the perfect offering, all right? Isaiah 53:10. Actually, this, I'm going to ask Sister to read it to us.
Isaiah,
Literally, that word means a trespass offering.
Isaiah 53:10. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand.
All right, I'm going to ask you to read it one more time. Maybe others were like me. I was trying to find my place and I did the wrong thing. Just read it one more time for us.
Yeah. Isaiah 53:10. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand.
Yeah. So God allowed what happened to Jesus to happen. And it says, when you make his soul an offering for sin. So this is not just in anyone, it was his inner feelings, all right? And that an offering for sin is literally a trespass offering, all right? That's what that means. To really understand, Lord, I don't know how the Lord felt, how Jesus felt, but Lord, He did it as unto you, and I offer his soul an offering for my sin. His soul is his mind, his thinking, his mind, his emotions, and his will. Lord, and that's what we're talking about when we say, I choose to forgive in the person of Jesus Christ. All right. I can only think of what they did to me, how they trespassed against me, how they wronged me. But I need to forgive them. And if I go by feelings, I'll never forgive them. So I'm going to do it in and through Jesus. I offer his soul up. I offer him up as that trespass offering. Lord, his perfection, his beauty. How could he forgive us? How does God forgive us for Jesus' sake? All right. We don't fully understand that. But when we make Jesus, his soul, an offering for sin, though we don't understand it, God does. And through the ability of Christ, it has to do with our will. I choose to forgive in the person of Jesus. I'm not going to trust my feelings. I'm going to let go of it. I'm not going to dwell on it because Jesus forgave me, and Jesus is going to forgive through me to forgive that person. All right. So Christ is that perfect offering, expiated sin, restored, redeemed, where that offering made complete reparation, the act of making amends. All right. The act of repairing or being repaired, the act of paying, this is my own words, the act of repaying the damage that was done. Only Jesus could really do that. And on the basis of what he was in front of the Lord, through him, I can do it. He's living in me now, and he can live through me again, the way he did it the other way. I cannot do it on my own. I cannot do it because of my feelings, because my feelings will always see things in the natural. But as I do it through the ability of Christ, I offer his soul, his thinking, his outlook, his feelings, his emotions, all right, and his will. Then what happens? It says, all right, because earlier it said actually that, here, just 1 minute. We're in Isaiah, all right. He was taken, in verse 8, he was taken from prison and from judgment. Who shall declare his generation? In other words, he was killed before he ever got married. He was killed before he had any offspring. But in verse 10, if I make the soul of Jesus, I say, I can't do it, but he can. Immediately, he will see his seed. I am his spiritual offspring. He begins to live in me. He prolongs his days. And the pleasure of the Lord will prosper in his hand, living through me what he did on earth by himself. He now comes into me. I'm put into him, and he lives through me his life, which enables me to be able to do it. So this is the end of our trespass offering. Shall we bow our heads? For those of you that are, of the ones that are wanting to be baptized in the Holy Spirit, you have already received that list of things to pray. You'll understand why. I'm helping you to do the repenting before you come that wet day. And just like, and I know now why God showed me about that spoon this morning. Over 60 years, that thing has been in me. I didn't know it. So God didn't hold it against me. But, by constantly showing me that, I guess he was trying to help me to understand, to ask him, why do I keep seeing this? But it only clicked today. And suddenly I knew that I knew. Revelation came from the Lord. And I was able to confess that sin. I was able to choose to forgive from my heart. So for you, all right, but for anybody and everybody, whether you're going to pray for the Holy Spirit or not, if you want to keep continuing to walk with God and have fresh touch with God, it's good to do self-examination and cry out to God to help you, because it says in his presence is fullness of joy. The moment I suddenly understood what it was and did it, immediately I started laughing in the spirit. I knew that my spirit had entered into the very presence of God in a way that I hadn't before, and the joy flooded my heart. So friends, none of us are beyond needing help from the Lord, all right? And so each of you bow your heads right now. Spirit of the living God, may we not only learn about the sin offering where Jesus became sin for us, but Lord, may we understand that the trespass or guilt offering has to do with when we have trespassed somebody else's rights or God's rights, that we need to make restitution, and we need to acknowledge it to that one, either to God or to that one. Acknowledge what it was and what we did and ask for forgiveness. Lord, may the truth of this trespass or guilt offering where Jesus is the expiator, or the one that makes the amends, makes the compensation, pays the full price, and to rectify the damage that we have done. May we in turn love him, bless him. It was all in one offering, but seen from different vantage points, seen from different aspects of that one offering of himself. Lord, we thank you that you are our trespass offering, that you are our sin offering, that because of your offering on the cross, we can be given the righteousness of God. And because of that, we can be at peace one with another. And we can then have the burnt offering where we can offer ourselves totally to you and allow your Holy Spirit just to come into us and use us for your glory, for your honor. Live through us, Lord. May we not just be complacent and satisfied with our knowledge of you. May we awaken and arise and begin to advance in you, Lord, and make deeper inroads into the realm of the Spirit. As you reveal truth to us, you are the light, and we thank you for it. That everything we have is because of you, Jesus. We love you and we praise you. Open the eyes of our understanding more and more, that our love for you will begin to expand more and more. In Jesus' name, Amen. God bless you. Bye-bye. See you next week. No, see you Thursday.